Zimbardo in San Francisco, and I want to begin by thanking you for the many presents you sent me from the Mardi Gras. Wonderful king cake and necklaces and masks. Before I begin, I should mention that I actually was in the Mardi Gras some years ago. I was on the Bacchus float, and it was a theme, a movie theme, and our float was South Pacific, and I was actually Bloody Mary dressed up in a woman's outfit. And by the time we got to downtown, we were all drunk because we started 2 hours out of the city, and this was a fancy float, so we were drinking champagne rather than beer. But it was a peak experience. Anyway, that was a while ago. That was part of my rich past, which is an indirect way to lead into the topic of my brief lecture today. Although most of my work focuses on the power of the situation to influence individuals, especially as in a prison study, one of the things that came out of the prison study was an interest in the psychology of time in general and time perspective in particular. Because in the prison study, our sense of time got distorted. There were no windows, there were no clocks, as you have in Las Vegas, in gambling casinos. But also, it got to be that each guard shift, which was 8 hours, we began to feel as if it was a day, because so much happened. And so each day really seemed expanded into 3 days. And also for the prisoners, it was even worse, because the guards in the night shift woke them up every few hours, so it disrupted their REM sleep. And so the prisoners especially, but also all of us, even the staff, because I'd be waking up in the middle of the night, awoken in the middle of the night, because the prisoner was having a breakdown. So I got interested in how each of us divides our personal experience into time frames or time zones. And the obvious ones are past, present, and future. So, but then as we studied this over, actually for 30 years, I've been studying the psychology of time perspective. And that's what I want to share with you today, how time perspectives govern our lives. Next. So I want to start back in mythic history with the famous temptation of Adam by Eve in the Garden of Eden, where the serpent has gotten Eve to take a bite of the forbidden apple, and now she's trying to get Adam to join her. So let's tune into their discussion. We can imagine Eve saying, "Come on, Adam, don't be afraid. I did it. You should take a bite of this delicious fruit. It's really yummy." And the serpent adds in, "One bite, Adam, don't abandon Eve. You are the man. In fact, you're the only man. So be a man. Don't be a sissy. Bite apple." And here's our sad little Adam. "I don't know. We might get in trouble with God. I'm not sure. Okay, just one bite. What the hell?" And obviously, it follows with disaster. So that introduces for me the general theme that really at the center of all life is temptation. We yield, we resist, we say yes, we say no, we say now, we say later. We act impulsively or we act reflectively. And for me, this can be all summarized as we live our life with a future focus or we live our life with a present focus. So what I'd like to do next is talk about a little bit about resisting temptation. A study was done many years ago at Stanford University in the nursery school by my colleague Walter Michel. What he did is he gave preschool children of different ages, he played a game, and obviously he arranged it so that they won. And when they won, they got a marshmallow. And before they could eat it, he gave them this choice decision. You can have one now, but if you wait until I come back, you can have two. And so the kids had to make that decision. Most of them say, obviously, they'll wait. The question is, will they be able to wait? So Michel leaves the room, and he comes back, I guess, 15 minutes later, so that's a very long time. And the marshmallow is sitting right in front of them. So the big question is, can they resist the temptation? Do they delay gratification or give into the gratification? He did that study, I guess, maybe 30 years ago. And then he's been following up. We'll look at the follow-ups as well. The problem is, he took black and white videos of his study in the Stanford Nursery School, but he did not get permission from the parents to allow him to allow the videos to be shown by anybody but him in the research context. So I redid his demonstration recently with 4-year-old kids in a local nursery school, and I'd like you to join me as we tempt these kids to take a treat now or wait till later. What's really fascinating is I made the deal, and then I left the room, and I had 2 video cameras hidden really on bookcases. And so we had no idea what the kids were doing. We didn't have a one-way screen to look in. And it wasn't until this study was all over, we probably tested about a dozen kids. And then I went back, looked at these amazing videos that you're going to see, especially the incredible nonverbal behavior of these children, where some eat and some resist and some don't. So join me in a fun demonstration.
Yeah.
Come in and have a seat here. Okay. Sit right up. Okay. Now, I'm going to play a game with you, and I would like you to point to which one is the correct answer. Which one is happy most of the time, the shy one or the not shy one? Not shy one, correct. Which one has a brown nose? The shy puppet or the not shy puppet?
The not shy puppet.
Point it. Thank you. I'm sorry. Stop that. Which one is happy most of the time? The shy one or the not shy one? Thank you. That's wonderful. I want to give you a prize for having done so well. Do you like marshmallows? You do. Well, here's a marshmallow for you. You can eat it now, but if you wait until I come back, you can have 2 of them. So you can eat this now. When I come back, you can have 2 marshmallows if you wait.
Okay, I'll wait.
Do you think you can wait? Okay. I'll be back in a minute.
Aww.
One of our friends did it. Yeah, it's really. We kept that thing. Why keep distracting? Since I could, this is Hello. You waited. You waited for me. Okay, so now you know what's going to happen. You're going to get a double treat. I'm going to give you 2 of these. You lovely marshmallows. You want to eat them now or save them for later? Okay, go ahead. You got it right. So I'm going to give you a prize. I'm going to give you a treat. The treat is a delicious marshmallow. But if you wait, I have to go check my car. When I come back, if you wait, you can have 2 of them. You can have 1 now, or when I come back, you can have 2. Okay? Okay. should not resist the temptation. 2 bites finishes the whole thing. These are you, marshmallows.
You ate the marshmallow. Was it delicious? You like marshmallows? You don't like marshmallows? You like chocolate? Okay.
I was ready for him with the chocolate in the back pocket.
But, if you wait till I come back, you can get 2. You can eat this now. I have to go check my car. When I come back, if you wait, I'll give you 2 of them. So you can eat it now, but if you wait till I come back, you have 2. Okay? You think you can wait?
3 times.
So you can eat it now, but if you wait, you're going to have 2 of them.
4 times.
I'll be back.
I'm not even out of the door. Now I want you to think about what is he going to say when I come back and confront him with the fact that he ate the chocolate and did not wait for me to get a second one.
Hello, I'm back. How are you?
Good. I ate it.
Which is amazing is, I did what you told me. I waited, and now I want 2 more chocolates, as you promised. So you know this kid is going to be in trouble in the world because he arranges the way things are according to how he would like his life to be. What my demonstration showed was what Michelle found, that at the age of 4, about half the children can resist temptation and half give in to temptation. And it's age-rated. As you get older, more and more kids resist and fewer yield. But even at older ages, there are still some who give in. And so the question is, what difference does that simple decision make in the lives of those kids? You know, you make a decision in the nursery school to eat a marshmallow or not. It turns out it makes an enormous difference in their lives. I made another little video to summarize some of the main findings that Michelle got. He went back 14 years later when these kids were 18, finishing up high school or going to college, interviewed them, interviewed their parents, and interestingly, he's following these kids up now 30 years later, actually seeing how successful they are in life. I think he's even doing some brain imaging of the kids to see, how profound is this difference. So let's look at this cute little video that I made for you. And it's summarized in my book, The Time Paradox. Yeah, visit the website, thetimeparadox.com.
You may already be familiar with the famous marshmallow study conducted by my colleague, psychologist Walter Michel, in which a group of 4-year-olds were given 1 marshmallow and told they were allowed to eat it immediately. They were told that if they could wait to eat the marshmallow after being left alone with it for a while, then they would be given an extra marshmallow to eat. Most eat the marshmallow as soon as they are left alone with it, but some other children are able to resist temptation. Those children who ate the marshmallow right away are considered to be oriented toward the present, while those who resisted temptation have an orientation toward the future. When the children were interviewed years later as 18-year-olds, there were amazing differences between the children who were able to delay gratification and those children who couldn't resist the immediate temptation. Scored 250 points higher on the SAT, overreacts to frustration, works well under pressure, indecisive, self-reliant and confident, prone to jealousy and envy. The marshmallow experiment is a classic study of how a person's ability to delay gratification, even at the age of 4, can predict many significant future outcomes. But what does this have to do with you? A lot. In my new book, The Time Paradox, you'll learn how your own relationship to time plays a significant role in your personal happiness, Whether you're looking for a better understanding of the world at large, from religion to politics to business to national destinies, or want a deeper understanding of yourself, the time paradox teaches you how to recognize your own attitudes toward time and how your everyday decisions are influenced by your personal time orientation. And it will help you overcome the hidden mental biases that keep you too attached to the past, unhealthily obsessed with future goals, with too focused on immediate gratification. You can improve your personal success, happiness, and psychological health. The time paradox will show you how. It's only a matter of time, making time work for you.
I could not resist my own temptation. So, in one sense, I think among life's most important lessons that parents and teachers have to get across to kids is you have to learn to delay gratification. You have to say no or later to all temptation, because temptation is all around us in various ways. And essentially, it's teaching children to be aware of the future consequences of current actions. That's really the main takeaway message from all the research by B.F. Skinner. Behavior has consequences, and we have to be aware of those consequences when we choose various behaviors. So what is time perspective? It's the study of how individuals divide the flow of their own human experience into different time zones or time frames. And we do it automatically and non-consciously because we've been doing it since we're kids. But these frames vary between cultures, between social classes, nations, and between individuals. The problem that I discovered is they become biased, meaning we learn to overuse some frames and we underuse others. And what I'm going to argue at the end of my presentation is we have to learn how to balance these time frames according to our individual needs at a particular time and according to the task we're working on. So lots of things influence our time perspective. So geography and climate. The closer you are to the equator, the more likely you are to be present-oriented. Different cultures or religions promote a focus on the past, present, future. We'll see in a moment at another video I'm going to show you toward the end that social class plays a huge role, as does education. The more people who are middle-class people are much more likely to be future-oriented, whereas lower-class people are more likely to be present-oriented. Rich people can be anything they want. And again, education level, you only get higher up in education if you are future-oriented, and the more future-oriented you are, the more likely you are to be more educated. If you come from a place where there's not stability, either your family is unstable or politically, economically unstable, you tend to be more present-oriented, or even if in the future you switch to be present-oriented, because a critical element of being future-oriented is you have to have faith or trust in the future, that the future will bring the fruits of your current labors. And again, there are role models in our family, among our friends. If you hang out with present-oriented hedonists, you're going to be a present-oriented hedonist, most likely. Okay, let's move on. So very simply, all life is about making decisions. And on a decision you make, you're going to take an action. And the question is, how does time perspective exert an influence? So the decision for students is always, should I work or should I study? Work or play? Have fun or get serious? Have protected sex, unprotected sex, no sex. Drive while under the influence of alcohol. Or put on my seatbelt or why bother. Have one more chocolate even though you know you're diabetic. So life is filled with little decisions or big decisions. Decisions about the school you should go to. Decisions about whether you should go to class in the morning when you're tired. For some people, the main influence on those decisions is in the immediate situation, the stimulation around that object. So if it looks good, tastes good, smells good, feels good, what other people are saying to do, what your biology tells you. So for some people, that is the sum of the causal influence of making a decision. For others, they ignore the present and they say, when was I in a situation like this in the past? What did I do? Did it work? I'll do it again. Did it not work? I'll think of something else. So for them, their decisions are anchored in the past, in their memories. A third category of people are those who, again, ignore all the present, all the forces in the present, like what the marshmallow looks like or smells like. And they say, if I do this, what are the anticipated consequences? So for the kids, if I eat the marshmallow now, the consequence is I get nothing. If I don't eat it, if I delay, then I get 2. So many people become future-oriented because they're able to resist the influence to act now in preference to act later. And we're going to see in a moment that those 3 categories have a huge influence on our lives. Now, I'm talking about them as if they are types, but it's really a continuum. And the scale I developed measures the degree to which you have each of those time perspectives. There are really 6 perspectives we have identified in our research. 2 on the present, 2 on the past, 2 on the future. So there are people who focus on the past, only on the positives, the good old times, the nostalgia. Other people focus only on the negatives, the bad old times, failure, regret, all the things you should have done, all the abuse you've had. Other people are heavily focused on the present. Present hedonists seek pleasure, avoid pain, live for the moment. They focus on their friends, family, fun. On the other hand, for many people who are poor, they develop a present fatalism, meaning nothing I do makes a difference. My life is controlled by fate, things beyond me. There are 2 ways to be future-oriented, and the primary way is to be goal-oriented, to set goals, to set sub-goals, to make to-do lists. But a different kind of future orientation we call transcendental future. That is, life begins after the death of your mortal body. And that's central in certain religions. So we can show that each of you has a score on those factors. I have a scale I developed called the ZTPI, Zimbardo Time Perspective Inventory. And there's 56 items, and you get a score on those first 5 factors. We have a separate scale for transcendental future. And we also have just developed a short form, 15-item scale. And so we give out this scale to people. We get their profile, and you can actually go on our time website, thetimeparadox.com, and take the scale, or you can do it in the book, The Time Paradox. So one of the interesting things we find, for example, is we do exploratory factor analysis. And we give our time scale along with a dozen other scales. And for each scale, we find out what is the correlation between, for example, being future-oriented and conscientiousness, anger, depression, etc., etc. And one of the amazing things is that usually in personality psychology, the correlation between any 2 scales is on the order of 0.2 or 0.3. With our time perspective inventory, we're getting correlations of 50, 60, and 70, which is unheard of. So if you're future-oriented, it correlates 0.70 with being conscientious. And why is that important? Because if you're conscientious, you're going to live longer than people who are not. As you see on the screen, there's a meta-analysis of 20 independent studies with nearly 9,000 people from 6 different nations, and each of them used a different way to measure conscientiousness, but it doesn't matter. However they mentioned it, high conscientious people live at least 2 years longer than others. And this is the only psychological trait that has been identified as having an impact on mortality. Now, why does that happen? I mean, this is some strange relationship between conscientiousness and mortality. Not at all. What we show that in our studies, students who are high future-oriented, they practice positive health behaviors and they avoid negative things. So they wear seatbelts. They don't take risks. They don't drink to excess. They don't get drunk. They don't take drugs. They eat health foods. They get medical checkups. Women get cancer pap smears. And so, if you're future oriented, you focus on the future consequences of present behavior, and you do things that past and present oriented people don't do. Okay, so be future oriented if you want to live long. Now, what we have also discovered that now these are a sample work, 200 college students, and we discovered that there were many who were high on past negative. That is, what dominated their thinking was always bringing the negatives from the past into the present, and also high on present fatalism. Now, again, if you're poor, if you live in a war zone, if you live in a city, it makes sense to be present fatalistic to some way. But if you're an ongoing functioning student, to be present fatalistic it puts you at risk. It's especially, if you're a functioning student who's a middle class socioeconomic status. So we think that this is diagnostically predictive of potential danger, that we think our scale should be given to all freshmen and in high school, even in college. And those who are past negative, very high in present fatalism, and some of it, combination, they need counseling, they need remedial help. Because when you're high on those things, you're high on depression, you're high on anger, you're high on anxiety, high on revenge. So it's a very, and when I say high, the correlations are 60 to 7.75. Those are the highest correlations of any scale I know in all of psychology. Okay, let's move on. One time perspective we have not yet included is what could be called the existential time perspective, or holistic expanded time perspective. And that's really true in Zen, in Zen meditation, for example. So in the Sanskrit, it is written, yesterday is already a dream, and tomorrow but a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. So it's not that there's not a past and future, but in the Zen notion that the past and the future are contained in the present moment. So we give our scale, ZTPI, we correlate with other scales, as I said, but we also look at behavioral outcomes. What difference does it make if you're present, past, or future oriented in terms of important outcomes? So in my class at Stanford, which was a big class for 1,000 students, we give the scale, and then we look at final exam scores, which are based heavily on multiple choice objective exams. And what you see is the students at Stanford who were the most future-oriented had the highest grades, and the lowest grades were kids who were present fatalistic, and next lowest were those who were present hedonistic. And they're also never on time, they miss appointments, they don't come to office hours. When we did the research, all students were required to be in 6 hours of experiments, for which they got, it was essential for the course. And the ones who came late, the ones who got incompletes, were always those who were present fatalistic or present hedonistic. Let's look at some other scale. So here's a big study, over 1,200 students from Stanford University and from Cornell. We wanted to get top schools from the East and West Coast. And we gave our scale, ZTPI, with standard measures of alcohol use and measures of risky driving, risky car driving, risky bike driving. And we also included an equal number of males and females. And what you can see overall is a clear pattern. Those who are present-oriented have a high positive correlation with alcohol use and with risky driving, and it's the same for males as it is for females. And the same exact thing is true of risky driving and alcohol use, and it's exactly the opposite for future-oriented students at those schools. The more future-oriented you are, the less likely you are to be involved in risky driving or to drink binge drink to excess, drink and get in trouble. And again, this is the first time we've seen that it's identical for females who are high future-oriented or high present-oriented. We go to a hospital. This is not those are my studies. Another researcher following up on my work gave our scale to heroin addicts and controls who were in a hospital setting. And what you can see is the heroin addicts were significantly higher, and this is 0.01 significance, meaning the result would not happen by chance more than 1 in 100. They were high on present hedonistic, higher than the controls, present hedonistic, present fatalistic, and lower on future. There was no difference on the past. So it's not just students for which our time perspective measures difference, but here are people who are addicted versus controlled. So in all the research we've done, and we've done a great deal of it, again summarized in the book, what we can see is that time perspective is the foundation for our emotions, for our motives, and action. So we discovered that people who are past-oriented positively are more happy, they have high self-esteem, they practice rituals, doing things the same way. They are the patriots in our country. They like to dwell on nostalgia. They feel gratitude, they show gratitude. They tend to have more emotional stability, and this is what you call the wisdom of the elders. It's really comes from these people. But also they have a sense of self-identity because their self at the moment is always anchored in the past. They know who their parents are, their grandparents. They know their line, their lineage, where their family came from. The good thing about being present-oriented, they are high in affiliation, especially students. They join every group. They're full of joy, pleasure, sensuality, sexuality, a lot of energy, engaged in a lot of activity. They're always excited. And they're more creative. They're high on improvisation. In fact, we did one research to show that among Stanford college students, when we asked them to paint a scene, and we focused some of them on the product versus some on the process, and then we had graduate students in the art department rate them. Present-oriented students who focused on the process of art got scored as most creative. Future-oriented students who focused on the product, on the outcome, had the highest score on technical merit. Technical merit. What's good about being future-oriented? High achievers. There's a health focus. They do contingency planning, probability thinking. There's high self-efficacy. They always are doing a cost-benefit analysis. They have expectancies. And they always have hope. However bad the present is, the future could be different. Now, one of the critical things is that all of school involves probability thinking, contingency planning, and cost-benefit analysis. So if you're past-oriented or present-oriented, it's not that you don't have the ability to think that way, it's simply you just don't think that way, you just don't practice. Because if you're present-oriented, life is dichotomous. Things are or they're not. So I say, do you want to go on a date? The answer is yes or no, not probably, I'll think about it. But if I ask you, how about, would you like to go to the movie with me on Friday? Well, you can say yes or no, but it's a probability function. So future-oriented people work better, function better in our world, which is really filled with probabilities. What's bad about these two different time perspectives? If you're anchored in the past negative, you're always going to have a greater focus on trauma. We have just done research, and I've written a new book called The Time Cure that shows that people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, whether it's soldiers from battle, women who've been raped, people who've been fatal car accidents, they are people who are very, very high on a scale of past negative. But that's also where guilt is. That's where depression is. These are people who want retaliation or revenge in some countries for things that happened, generations ago. What's bad about being present hedonistic? All addiction is addiction of present hedonism. They take risky acts. They're prone to violence, prone to anger. And they believe in gambler's luck, and that's why in gambling casinos, Atlantic City or Las Vegas, they would light up when a present hedonistic person comes in. Because however bad they're doing, however much they're losing, they believe that the next round is going to be better. Now, I presume many of you, like me, are heavily future-oriented. The bad thing is that anxiety and worry are in the future. That many future-oriented people work so hard that they are socially isolated, they compete rather than cooperate. And at least among males, it promotes impotence because sexuality becomes a product. I mean, sexuality, unless you have an orgasm, it's a failure. And so the savior for future-oriented males, at least, is the little blue pill. So, in winding down, what we have seen is the optimal temporal mix is a blend of past, present, and future. Because from the past, you get your roots. It connects you to your identity, to your family, to be grounded. What the future gives you is wings to soar to new destination challenges. And from the present, you get energy. You explore people, you explore places, you explore yourself, you explore your own sensuality. And so you need that combination. And what we have found is past positive is always good when blended with a moderate amount of future, because we don't want you to be workaholic when it's too extreme. But what's really wonderful, and I guess we're the only ones that ever say that, you need a dash of present hedonism. So that when you get something done, you take time out to reward yourself. The terrible thing about present hedonism is when it's impulsive, like the little boy in the marshmallow study. I'm not even out of the room, he's already got the chocolate in his mouth. What is always bad, what is always a danger is to be high on past negative and high on present fatalism. So in that optimal profile, you want those things to be as low as possible. So here's a wonderful cartoon where Einstein discovers that time is actually money. Because if you think about it, time certainly in business is one of the most important things. When you get into the business world, if you keep somebody waiting a minute or two, they see this as a sign of irresponsibility. You could lose a job if you came to an interview a couple of minutes late, because they say time is money. To be late is costly. Yeah. So I think I'd like to summarize what I've said in a very unusual way, and I'm not sure we can have questions or not. I would love to. I gave a talk in London a few years ago, and it was something like this with slides and so forth. And they edited it down to 10 minutes, and they had 3 artists drawing their images of what they thought my talk was all about. And what they produced is a 10-minute animated video, which has been seen now by more than 2 million people around the world. And it's brilliant. I mean, not what I said is brilliant, but the way they captured the ideas with visual images. And they're using a new technique called Prezi, new presentation technique, P-R-E-Z-I, which I have to learn. It replaces PowerPoint. So this is summarizing what I said up to now and expanding on it. So let's look at RSA Animate. He's Hungarian.
Can you get him to give us a special rule? How do we do it for training?
So what we have discovered in 30 years of research, there's 6 main time zones that people live in. 2 focus on the past, 2 on the present, and 2 on the future. The people who focus on the past either remember all the good old times, successes, happy birthdays, nostalgia. These are the people who keep the family record, the family books, who have the family rituals. There are other people who focus only on regret, only on failure, only on all the things that went wrong. So we call those focus past positive or past negative. There are two ways to be present-oriented. The most obvious is to be hedonistic, that you live for pleasure and you avoid pain. You seek novelty, you seek sensation. There are other people who are present-oriented because they say, it doesn't pay to plan. My life is fated. Fated by my religion, fated by my poverty, fated by the conditions that I'm living under. Most of us are here because we are future-oriented, that we have learned to work rather than play, to resist temptation. But there's another way to be future-oriented. Depending on your religion, life begins after the death of the mortal body. To be future-oriented, you have to trust that when you make a decision about the future, it's going to carry out. If you have great inflation, you don't put money in the bank because you can't trust the future. If there's instability in your family, adults can't keep their promises to you. The closer you are to the equator, the more present-oriented you are. The more you're in an environment where climate doesn't change, it gives you a set of imagining sameness rather than change. Protestants everywhere have higher gross national product than Catholic countries, in part because of the Protestant ethic, because of the notion that you work hard to succeed, to demonstrate that you are God's chosen people. My family comes from Sicily, and in Italy there is a political movement called La Liga to cut Italy in half, to have North Italy and South Italy, cut it just below Tuscany. The people in the North say, we do all the work. The people in the South are lazy, they're like children. They want to have babies, have 3-hour dinners, etc. People in the South say, they're not Italian, they're German and Austrian. You know. They eat yogurt instead of pasta. they take their lunch in a paper bag. And in the recent election, the leader got 14% of the national vote. It turns out, it is accurate. We've done research to say people in the North tend to be, on a scale, much more future-oriented. People in the South tend to be more past-oriented or present hedonistic. And so my family is Sicilian, and I come from Sicily. I go back every year. I started an educational foundation. We send high school kids to college and set up computer labs. And I'm talking about some of this stuff, and a man comes up and says, I'm a poet. I live with words. It wasn't until I heard your talk that I realized there's no future tense verb in Sicilian dialect. I said, what do you mean? There was, is, there's no will be. He said, that's why nothing gets done. And I didn't realize it because we never planned. So again, here's how when you have a number of people who share a certain time perspective, then it does come to characterize the nation. The same way, if you have a Catholic nation where people tend to be present or past-oriented, rather than a Protestant nation where in general people tend to be more future-oriented, it affects you in very profound ways. So there's a wonderful book called The Geography of Time, and it's written by a dear friend of mine, Robert Levine, who's a social psychologist, and he actually literally went around the world doing wonderful experiments. He looks at what he calls the pace of life. See, time perspective is how people divide their own experience into partitions, time zones. Another kind of time orientation is your sense of duration. How much time has expired while you're sitting in a dentist's office before they start drilling? How much time has expired when you've been waiting in line? How much time has expired when you're having fun or upset? So time duration is totally a function of whether you're bored, whether you're excited or not. And what he does is he shows that in different cultures, people have a different pace of life. And you do this very simply. You sit in a cafe and you mark off 100 meters, and as people pass, you start a stopwatch. And you see how fast people walk. You go to a post office, and on a piece of paper you say, I'd like, 3 pounds of this postage or 10 euros. And you see how long it takes. So he has a bunch of these measures. And it turns out you can identify cultures as a different pace of life, and now cities. And he shows in America, you can rank 7 cities according high pace of life and low pace of life. And the ones that have the highest pace of life, men have the most coronary problems. That is, this becomes part of your whole way of life. We all begin life as present hedonists. All of us. I mean, at the breast, at the bottom, we want pleasure, we want to avoid pain. And one of the things that families do, and especially school, my sense is the purpose of schooling is to take present-oriented little beasts and make them more future-oriented. Some cultures make them more past-oriented. In America, a child drops out of school every 9 seconds. This is worse for kids from a minority background, and it's worse for boys than girls. There's actually
a disaster recipe developing among boys in America, literally dropping out of high school, college, and it's not simply poor performance. One of the problems is, a recent study shows that by the time a boy is 21, he has spent at least 10,000 hours playing video games alone. Probably more watching pornography alone. And you put that together, it means A, they haven't learned social skills, emotional social intelligence, but also it means that they live in a world that they create. They're playing Warcraft, they're playing these other games, which is exciting. In fact, I just heard the other day that these game companies are now going to develop 3D games so that the world will be all around you. Their brains are being digitally rewired, which means they will never fit in a traditional classroom, which is analog. Somebody talks at you without even the nice pictures. Meaning it's boring. I mean, you control nothing. You sit there passively. And if you want to change the curriculum, I understand the traditionalists here say we got to go back to reading, writing, arithmetic. Disaster. These kids will never fit into that. They have to be in a situation where they are controlling something, and school is set up, you control nothing. You're passive. School is all about learning, delay of gratification, literally endlessly. All addictions are addictions of present hedonism. Food, sex, drugs, gambling, etc. All of our propaganda, all of our educational message, all our public relations messages are designed for future-oriented kids. Who's not the problem? They tell you, here's the negative consequences of doing what you're doing. Future-oriented kids know that, and they don't do it. Present-oriented kids know the future consequences. If you're a teenage girl, you know that if you have unprotected sex, you're likely to get pregnant or have sexually transmitted disease. You know it, but that knowledge never feeds back to change your behavior. So that's the interesting thing about time perspective. I think we are underestimating the power of technology in rewiring young people's brains. Kids don't wear wristwatches. They say it's a single function device. You don't waste time with a single function device. And they live in a digital thing. What matters is the second. You know, I didn't mention one of the things that gets people upset in America is how long it takes to boot up your computer and how long it takes to download something. Less than a minute. That makes people angry. So it becomes an emotional thing. You get angry waiting in line, waiting for services. Waiting is a waste of time, even if it's waiting for your computer to boot up. So I think there's a fundamental change going on in our culture that I think we adults are not realizing, that kids are totally different than we were. And it's because it's revolution in time. There was a recent study we did with USA Today, asking Americans how busy they are. The vast majority of Americans, more than 50%, said, I'm busier now than it was last year, I'm busier last year than the previous year, and I sacrifice friends, family, and sleep for my success. This is across the board, not separating my future or anything. And then we say, suppose you had an 8-day a week, what would you do? They say, oh, that would be great. They would spend most of that time working hard, achieving more, not with friends, not with family, and not even sleeping. They did a study 20 years ago, and I was upset, again, from this Italian background. Only 60% of Americans said they have regular sit-down family dinners. When we redid the study last year, only 1 in 5 American families have sit-down dinners together. In America, we talk about family values. You can't have a family value if you never have family meals together. I think many of life's puzzles can be solved by simply understanding our own time perspective and that of others. Lots of conflict we have with people is really a conflict in different time perspectives. Once you're aware of that, you stop making negative attributions like you're dumb or you're childish or you're pig-headed or you're authoritarian. It's really the most simple idea in the world.
Thank you. So, it's really a new way of presenting information. It's really brilliant. And I would, if any of the students have interest in design or art, you should begin to think about doing that. That's a whole career, because these 3 artists in London have been inundated with requests to do similar programs. So I think with this, class is drawing to an end. I want to thank you. I want to show you a gift I just got. A high school class in New York, in Rockaway. I sent a picture. They asked for an autographed picture, which I sent. And the whole class, they had these shirts made, and they took a funny picture of the whole class wearing them. Some of them were painted on mustache. Anyway, I'm sorry that the sound, I can't hear you, because I was hoping to have a Q&A session. But if there's time, we can do it, I think, using your cell phone. But anyway, thank you so much for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed this Skype lecture.
Yes.
Yes, we can. But can you focus the camera on the student? Yeah, no, it was on the ceiling. Yeah, it's better. Great looking classroom, wow. Yeah. If the students could introduce themselves, that would be great. Get some shy ones up there.
Can people change? Can people be person-oriented and then later be people? Great question. Dr. Zimbardo, I'm going to give some thought. I'm shooting through, and I'm asking people to change. If you're person-oriented at one time and then later be people.
I didn't hear that. Say it again louder. I'm sorry.
Okay, Shanika wants to know if people can change their orientation. Can they be present-oriented and then future-oriented?
Oh, wait, I'm still. You say it again. Yes, okay. Tell me the question. Yes, actually, the main function of education is to take kids who are present-oriented and make them more future-oriented. But also, in my book, The Time Paradox, one reason to read it one reason to read The Time Paradox is we have a whole chapter.
Yeah.
Okay. A reason to read The Time Paradox is I have a chapter on how to become more future-oriented, how to become more present-oriented, how to become more past-oriented, to blend or balance whatever orientation you have. Yeah, the orientations are not fixed, they're learned, and they can be modified. Next.
Next question.
All right, we have another question.
This one is about the
Right?
she wants to know when the experiment
Work out the way you were going to expect it.
How did it affect me?
Okay, I've got another question.
Okay,
here's your
how long did it take for you became embedded in your role as an experiment and realized there was no way out?
It took 5 days. See, again, I wrote another book called The Lucifer Effect, Understanding How Good People Turn Evil. And what I tried to describe there is the gradual descent into the hell of the prison study. And that it's each hour, each day, you become more and more embedded in that situation, in that role. So over time, I moved from being the principal investigator to being the prison superintendent. And that happens gradually. And it happens because of the entire setting. So when parents come to visit their children during visiting days, a requirement is they have to see the superintendent. And I'm in an office that's labeled prison superintendent. Now they know it's not a prison, they know it's an experiment, they know it's Stanford University, but when they see me, they treat me as if I was the superintendent of the prison, and I respond that way. So when they say their son looks terrible because he's not sleeping, I say, what is your son's problem, madam? And I know he's not sleeping because the guards wake them up every 2 hours. And then, when I'm dealing with this Palo Alto Police Department, they're dealing with me as if I was the head of this prison. And so over time, I begin to think of myself, unconsciously as the prison superintendent. What's critical is in that role, my main focus is really on the guards and my institution. Just as the focus of prison administrators is on the guards, or in hospitals, it's the nurses and doctors, not so much the patients. So when prisoners were having emotional breakdowns, I should have just ended the study if my mentality was to be the principal investigator. In my role as prison superintendent, my job was get a replacement, which I did. And that was a mistake, because I should have ended the study when the second prisoner broke down. Because when the first one broke down, we thought it was an aberration, that somehow we didn't do good screening. But once the second prisoner broke down, in an experiment, we proved our point that situations can have powerfully negative effects. So what it means is, in research like that, you always need somebody who is not part of the experiment as kind of an ombudsman or overseer who could have blown the whistle earlier.
Thank you so much for that.
I think we have
I think we have time for just one more question. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, my whole life is, I spent many years since the prison study, and I did other research earlier, so that I got the reputation of being Dr. Evil. Also, with this beard, I look a little bit like that. So now I'm the good witch of the West Coast, because we created a foundation which has its focus is training people, kids through corporations, how to be everyday heroes, how to be wise and effective heroes, who do little things each day and become positive change agents. And the reason I did it was because I believe that even though situations can make good people do bad things, that we can create situations that enable ordinary people to begin to think of themselves as heroes in training. And so we have a wonderful website, heroicimagination.org, that I'd love you to visit. And ultimately, we'd love to be setting up hero clubs in every school, around the world, where people work to bring out the best, not only in themselves, but in others. We really think about it as discovering your inner hero, giving that inner hero shape. And we've just finished a wonderful program in an inner city in Oakland, a ghetto school, where people have been telling these kids they're nothing. And we say, no, you got an inner hero that's waiting to be expressed, that you have to give a voice to. And these kids are transformed. But the main thing to teach is, our program that you'll see online begins by saying you have to understand the power of the dark side, because that's where I came from. And we use lots of videos from the prison study, from the Milgram study, funny ones from Candid Camera. So we fortify you against the power of the dark side. Then we inspire you to the bright side, and then we go through training and teaching program. So it's very exciting. I'm in the process of fundraising, which is boring and difficult, because one of the things I'm not good at is asking for money, but hopefully we'll get money from foundations or from others, because we'd really like this to go global. Right now we have a lovely office in San Francisco. If you ever come out here, which you should, because it's the best city in the world, give me a call. We'll take you to our hero office. I think I have to go now.
Thank you, Zimbardo. One last time.